Wonderful. I think people are still filing in, but I think we'll make a start. Hello, everyone. My name's Simon Forrester. I'm filling in for David Chaplin today, who's taking a well-earned staycation from his normal hosting duties. This is, of course, the SCL Tea and Tech session. If you like what you hear over the course of this session, please feel free to buy us a coffee. I think there'll be a link going in the chat. We very much enjoy your donations and your coffees. If you've got any ideas for a talk you'd like to do, please email us at hello@scl.org. And we'll be in touch and we'll see if there's anything you want to present. Before we get started, a few points of order. Your mics are muted on entry. Please leave them that way. There'll be an opportunity at the end to talk and to ask questions. And once the main presentation's done, at which point we'll throw it open to the floor. Those questions that you ask and that part of the conversation will not go into the recording that we ultimately publish as a result of this. I've been very much looking forward to this session. Today we've got Neil Brown and Alex Bloor, who are going to talk to us about demystifying the dark web, or the dark net, I should say. So without further ado, over to you guys.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Demystifying Darknet. Simon says this session is being recorded, not just for the SCL website, but we're hoping to put it out onto YouTube as well, so slightly wider audience for it. If you have questions that you desperately want to ask while we're going through, feel free to stick them in chat. And I think Alex can see the chat window as we're going. We'll try and pick those up as we go along. Otherwise, hopefully plenty of time for questions at the end. Who are we? Alex.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Alex Bloor, and I'm General Manager of Andrews and Arnold. We're a small boutique internet service provider, and I've presented at SCL with Neil before.
Yeah, so we did the back to basics of tech. We've done that for a couple of years now, and for some reason the SCL is happy to have us back again, so we're delighted to be here. I'm Neil. I'm a former trustee, now fellow of the SCL, and you've probably seen my content inflicted on you in the magazine and on the website quite a lot. We've both put our Twitter handles into there just in case you want to follow us or follow up on the conversation. If you're one of the 2 or 3 people that uses Mastodon, you can find me on there as well, or get in touch via Matrix. So, the darknet. What image do you get when someone uses the term the darknet?
Darth Vader.
Darth Vader, bad, evil. It conjures up this mythical place full of criminals and undesirables. I use the darknet. I'm not a criminal.
And I use it as
well. Yeah. Actually, interesting. I don't know if you can see perhaps better than I can, Alex. Show of hands if you're comfortable. People.
Hold on. Let me just drag out the window. There we go.
Okay. How many of you have used or attempted to access the darknet? Tor.
I'm seeing 1 or 2 hands up, literally. So most people haven't, I would say.
Haven't seen it or perhaps don't want to put their hand up on the video for whatever reason, but let's assume a small minority. You've probably seen the stereotypical images that you get in news stories run with the darknet, that sort of picture of the denizen of the darknet wearing a hoodie and a mask. Not on days like this, I suspect. The darknet, it's scaremongering, probably somewhere between a term for something that the writer of the article or whatever doesn't understand, or because they're trying to make some kind of point about it. We'll talk you through what actually is the darknet, and what you'll come away with is the fact that it is a routing system. It's a clever routing system, but it's just a routing system, and that doesn't make for a particularly clickbaity headline. And that's typically why I'll always say the darknet in inverted commas. There's nothing intrinsically dark about it. It's just a routing system. I'm managing director of a law firm, Decoded Legal, and we make a number of our systems available within Tor, within the darknet. The first, the really long URL beginning .legal, ending in .onion, that's our main website. The second, CHEL4, I didn't bother to try and generate a fancy name for that. That's our blog, which you can access within Tor. we also have a file transfer service that you can access within Tor if you want to do so. Loads of companies, loads of organizations, we'll talk about those a bit later on, have services available within Tor for completely non-nefarious purposes. Again, there's no real reason for it to be the dark net. We've already said Tor a few times. Hopefully that acronym will be familiar to you. T-O-R, the onion router. The idea of an onion, a multi-layered thing. The layering, the onion part of Tor, comes from the layers of encryption that are used as your traffic is routed through this network. We'll show a little diagram in a bit and explain how it works, but that's the origin of the name onion. These multiple layers of encryption, they get peeled off as your traffic moves through the Tor network from the starting point through to the destination.
And a little tip, if you want to look like you know what you're talking about, is that although it is an acronym, Tor, T-O-R, for some obscure reason, maybe Neil knows the reason, it's always capital T, but then lowercase o-r. So it becomes like a new proper noun, Tor, not T-O-R.
Yes, I don't know why that's the case, but if you see it written as capital T-O-R, or all capitals rather, probably a sign the author's not too familiar with it. But it is an acronym. It's the onion router, the idea of this multiple layers of encryption. And Tor is focused on one thing, protecting your data in transmission. Nothing more than that. And that's quite important when we talk about anonymity and Tor in a bit. The Tor network's made up of a number of different nodes, a number of different elements or services. You've got a guard node, the entry point into the network. You've got relay nodes, servers that move traffic from one place to another. You've got an exit node, where if you're trying to access a site on the ClearNet, on the normal internet, your traffic will need to exit the Tor network at some point and connect to that server via an exit node. And bridges and pluggable transport, which we'll talk about once we've talked about the other three, to help deal with situations of censorship or where you can't connect to a guard node as normal. But let's take a nice simple diagram. Tor creates a route between your computer and the computer that you want to talk with. In this case, we'll use a web server, moving your traffic through multiple relay points. So you've got your computer here with Tor installed on it. The first thing that your computer will do is get a list of those entry points, of those guard nodes, the places that act as the entry point to the Tor network, and it will connect into one of them. You'll see there three layers of encryption. From your guard node, the guard node will then strip off one of those layers of encryption and send the resulting traffic onto a relay node. The relay node will strip off one of the remaining two layers of encryption and send the traffic on to the exit node. The exit node will then strip off that last layer of encryption. It will get to see which site you actually want to visit and will send the traffic to it. The process repeats itself on the way back, each layer adding another layer of encryption until it comes back to your browser where it's decrypted, and then you see the site that you're trying to visit. So in this example, someone's sitting in front of their computer, they're trying to connect to the Andrews and Arnold website through Tor. The idea of the multiple layers of encryption is that none of the nodes within the network get to know the full path. The guard node doesn't know the identity of the exit node or the site that you're trying to visit. The exit node knows the site that you're trying to visit because it connects to it to pull the data back, but it doesn't know who you are, for example. No part of the network knows the complete path. It knows just where the data came from and where to send it. Each node peels off one of those layers of encryption to see where it needs to send the data.
And the route taken through the network can change, as the diagram is now showing. So although the guard node probably only changes every few months, the relay may well change up to sort of every 10 minutes, or indeed we'll come on to it in a few moments. You can actually force the route to change yourself. You can ask for a new circuit through the network. And that's obviously...
If you're staying within a site, roughly every 10 minutes or so, you'll find that the route, the circuit changes. whenever you connect to a new site, you will get a different circuit as well. But your guard node is somewhat more static than that, typically changes every couple of months. What you'll see from the padlocks here, let's say there are some padlocks in black on the diagram, and there's a little green padlock in the URL bar of the browser that you're probably used to seeing. What you will have noticed is there's no black padlock on that link between the exit node and the web server of the site that we're trying to visit. That's to say that the encryption that Tor provides, those multiple layers of encryption, exists between your browser and the exit point, the edge of the Tor network. Tor cannot encrypt your traffic from the exit point onwards. You need to make sure that you're protecting yourself from that point on. In this case, the Andrews and Arnold website offers, I think forcibly, TLS, an encrypted connection. So if you try and connect to the website from your computer, it will automatically upgrade it to a TLS connection and so secure the transmission. In this case, that would mean that the traffic from the exit node to the Andrews and Arnold site is also encrypted. But that's a function of the web server, not of the Tor network. What you'll also see is that Tor is trying to protect your traffic in the course of transmission through the network. If you connect to the Andrews and Arnold website and you click the login button or you click the order button and you give your name or your account details, your credit card details, clearly the site at the end gets to see those details. So when we talk about anonymity, and we'll build on this a little later, Tor is protecting your traffic in transmission. It doesn't stop you compromising your own anonymity by sending identifiable data to the site or the server that you're actually visiting. And if that little green padlock wasn't there, if the connection between the exit node and the server was not encrypted, anyone who was spying on the traffic going into that web server or leaving that exit node would be able to look inside and sort of see what you were sending as well. So that's in a nutshell, Tor in operation, this multi-hop network designed to secure your traffic in transmission using layers of encryption that get peeled off as you go through. But how do you find that initial hop? How do you get that guard list? Well, the guard list is public. The list of addresses of those nodes is public information, which means that an internet access provider, for example, a coffee shop, or the state access provider in a more repressive regime, might attempt to stop connections through to the addresses of those guard nodes. And that's where bridges and pluggable transport comes in. If your ISP or your access provider is blocking Tor guard nodes, you may not be able to use them to connect into the Tor network. You might, however, be able to use a bridge. A bridge is effectively a private gateway into Tor. But to use a private gateway, you need to know where it is. And one way to do that is the Tor project publishes an email address. You can email it and it will automatically respond to you with the identity of bridges that you can try. Obviously, to do that, you have to be comfortable emailing the Tor project and getting your list of bridges back that way, which may not be possible for everyone. The Tor project also hosts some public bridges, but because these are publicly known, they could suffer from the same problem as the public guard node list, and an ISP might try to block them. Pluggable transport. Some internet access providers have even more intrusive surveillance technology in place that tries to look at the content or look at the traffic that you're sending to them and make decisions based on that. For example, packet inspection or packet analysis. They may try and detect, is the traffic Tor traffic? And if so, drop it. Pluggable transport comes in a number of different shapes and forms. The idea is to obfuscate the fact that the traffic is Tor traffic and so allow you to connect through into a guard node without it being dropped by your internet access provider. I've used Tor for probably the best part of 18 years now. I've never had to switch to a bridge or to use pluggable transport. I've never had a problem connecting through to it. For others, I'm sure it's an everyday experience as they need to find a different way of trying to connect into the Tor network. Where did Tor come from?
So perhaps surprisingly, it started in the US military, in the Navy. in the mid-1990s. And I guess the idea was to try and provide a mechanism by which freedom fighters or dissidents or that sort of person could somewhat more safely than they otherwise were communicate with one another and with the outside world. But it no longer is a military owned project. In 2006, it became essentially a charitable non-profit, and it's now an open source project contributed to by many people all over the world, and funded by all sorts of donations and all various sources. So that's kind of where it came from and what its origins were.
And what we've talked about so far is Tor, the onion router itself. And we've said that the emphasis of Tor, the purpose of Tor, is to protect your data in transmission. Tor has changed quite a lot over the years that it's been available. I started using Tor in the early 2000s, where it was somewhat harder to use Tor, certainly to use it successfully, than it is today. Today, it's very easy if you want to give it a try, thanks to a piece of software known as the Tor Browser Bundle. Now, this isn't the same as Tor. Tor Browser Bundle is, as the name sounds, a browser bundled with Tor. You get the protections that you get from the Tor network, plus the protections that have been built into this browser package, thanks to some of the add-ons and configurations of it. So with Tor Browser Bundle, you get some additional wider protections that you don't get just by routing through Tor itself. And it's a browser just like any other browser you might use on your computer. And if you're used to installing plugins or add-ons into your browser, well, Tor Browser Bundle comes with some. We talked, for example, about TLS, transport encryption between a browser and a server. Not all sites offer TLS, and for those which do, not all of them will automatically redirect unencrypted traffic across to an encrypted connection. One of the plugins in Tor Browser Bundle attempts to forcibly convert unencrypted traffic to encrypted traffic if the server supports it. It can't magic encryption out of nowhere. It can't force encryption if the server isn't offering it. But if the server offers it but's a bit quiet about it, HTTPS everywhere will try and get the server to talk in an encrypted way to you. Tor Browser Bundle also blocks some software, some plugins, some functionality that might expose your identity. So for example, some video plugins may entail showing who you actually are to the server, and those are blocked. And the Tor project discourages, it doesn't stop it, but it discourages you from installing your own plugins into Tor Browser Bundle to try and maintain the protection that it offers. Cookies, I think Simon did a well-received session on this 2 or 3 weeks ago. Cookies are a commonly used way of trying to track you across the internet. Within Tor Browser Bundle, cookies are valid only for a single session, and you can easily create a new identity, clear all your history within that Tor Browser Bundle, and start a new circuit within Tor, so you're routing to the sites in a new way, clear all your cookies, and so effectively start afresh. So if you're trying to browse in a way that doesn't rely or doesn't enable people to track you based on historic cookies, Tor Browser Bundle has protections for that built in. I think from memory, it also blocks third-party cookies by default, so you should only be served cookies directly from the sites that you're visiting. There are 2 ways you can use Tor. One is routing your traffic through it, and the other is accessing services that are available only within Tor. We'll start by talking with routing traffic through Tor, and that's the example in the diagram we showed earlier. Someone sitting at their computer wants to access a site on the web, on the ClearNet if you want to say that. So here we go, we've got Tor Browser Bundle, and you use it just like you would any other browser. So we type in aa.net.uk, the Andrews and Arnold website. It connects through, you can browse it just like any other browser. It is a normal experience. But you have an extra button that you can click, and you can see how you're connected to it.
So this is really showing what we talked about earlier in the diagram, but with slightly more detail. Essentially, the computer that this browser is running on is making a connection to, we mentioned the guard node or entry node, which happens to be in Germany on 82.149. etc. That is then connecting onto a relay node, which happens to be in the Netherlands. And then finally, that's connecting on to an exit node in the United States on 199.249. And that is making the final, that's making the final step to the aa.net.uk website. Now, as we mentioned before, the guard node that you use will typically remain fairly static for around 2 months or thereabouts. But the relay node and the exit node can obviously change quite often in a single browsing session of a specific site, perhaps around every 10 minutes or so. However, you can tear the circuit you've got down if for some reason you feel, like you want a bit of extra privacy or to shake things up. You can press the new circuit button, and what that will do is try and connect to another relay node and another exit node, although again, your guard node will typically stay the same.
And if you're the operator of the website, in this case, the operator of aa.net.uk, what you would see in your server logs, if you're logging traffic that visits you, is that last IP address, the IP address of the exit node in the United States. It will look as if the traffic is coming from there, because of course, that is where the traffic is coming from. It's routing through that node. Contrast that with if you were just browsing, I say normally, browsing from a non-Tor circuit. What the site operator would see is the IP address which your ISP has allocated either to your router's interface or, depending on your setup, to your computer. But in routing the traffic through Tor, what the operator sees is the IP address, the 199 number, of the last point of connection, the exit node, rather than of your computer or your router. I think we will skip over this quite quickly. There are different types of traffic. Tor only permits one, it permits TCP traffic. I think we talk about that in Back to Basics Tech, if you want a little more on that. And by default, it also drops some traffic which is particularly used for email spam, port 25 SMTP traffic, to try and prevent the Tor network from being abused in that particular way. The examples we've used so far have all been someone trying to connect from a web browser to a web server. But there are loads of other things that you might want to access over the internet that are not web-based. So we take an example. If you have an instant messaging client running on your computer, you may want to use that via Tor, but not in a web browser. You just want to use your client. Well, Tor Browser Bundle and the Tor daemon itself, if you're running that, can act as a proxy. And what that means is you configure your instant message client on your computer to talk to your Tor client or to Tor Browser Bundle, and it will then proxy and route all your traffic through that over the Tor network to wherever it is that you're trying to connect. And that way, you're not just limited to viewing web servers or websites via Tor browser. You can connect any system that you have proxied into the Tor network. Something to bear in mind is that if you're going via Tor Browser Bundle, the proxy is only running for as long as Tor Browser Bundle is open. If you accidentally close Tor Browser Bundle, then your application might either fail to connect, or worse, if you're trying to protect your privacy, might fall back to a different network connection and connect via that, so potentially showing your router's or your computer's IP address to the target server. But you can typically proxy traffic through Tor using what's known as a SOX proxy. Anonymity. Tor, as we've said, is about protecting your data in transport. It offers protections. It doesn't claim to offer full anonymity. Tor Browser Bundle adds some additional protections, but neither Tor nor Tor Browser Bundle makes you anonymous. The system is not foolproof. There may be functionality or services or bugs that means that someone is able to see more of your identity than you're intending to reveal. You still need to think about what data you're sending to the server to which you're connecting. We'll talk a bit later about Facebook having a server available within Tor, an Onion service. Well, If you connect through to Facebook via Tor, you still log into the Tor, you still log into Facebook. Facebook still knows who you are. It potentially even has an extra data point that you are a Tor user. You're not anonymous, you're identifying yourself through the Tor network. Common Tor occurrence. How many of you get frustrated every time you try and access a site and you get blocked by a captcha asking you to spot, which of these are traffic lights, which of these are penguins, which of these are bicycles? If you go through Tor, you are likely to see a lot more of these. A lot of sites will identify that traffic coming from Tor, they consider it might be malicious. It may indeed be an IP address from which there's some unusual traffic. So they're more likely to throw up a captcha and try and get you to prove that you're not a robot. And in some cases, you can get stuck in a circle of these. That means you never actually get to see the site in question. Frustrating, unfortunately, part of life at the moment, dealing with Tor.
I did actually have exactly this when I last used Facebook over Tor, except it wasn't a captcha. It was actually like a proper security alert that popped up on another browser running Facebook via the clear web. So yeah, you do have to get used to these types of things.
Why might you want to pass your traffic through Tor? A whole range of purposes. If you're developing a website, you may want to see what it looks like to someone outside your network. Great, route the traffic through Tor, and you can see what it would look like to someone who wasn't connected to your network, from, in the case we've just seen, someone in the USA. What if you intended your site to be only accessible within your network, or a particular page to be restricted? Again, routing your traffic through Tor, you can see whether you've actually successfully locked it down or not, or at least see whether it is externally accessible via Tor. Some sites engage in algorithmic discrimination and pricing. They may use, for example, your cookie history to work out, or your history of repeat visits based on IP address, to see what price they might be offered. They might think that you're getting desperate, try and offer you a higher price. If you connect to the site via Tor Browser Bundle, they don't have the benefit of any of that history or even seeing your IP address. You may not be able to buy if there's a better price. They may block people purchasing via Tor. But you could at least see that they are attempting to discriminate based on information they know about you, which could influence your purchasing decision. Perhaps you simply don't have the same privilege as a lot of other people. Perhaps you want to look at a website dedicated to an LGBT+ audience, but you would not feel comfortable doing that over your own internet connection from your normal browser. Private browsing mode may get you so far in terms of restricting what stays on your computer at the end of the session, but maybe you'd feel more comfortable looking at that over Tor. As lawyers, if you are considering a lawsuit against somebody and you want to do some research first, do you really want to connect to their website from your firm's IP range so that someone looking through the logs can see, oh, we've had an awful lot of traffic from that law firm recently? Maybe, to add a slightly more covert element to your investigation, you route your traffic via Tor. Just a sample of the number of uses, none of which deserve the moniker dark. All perfectly normal, reasonable, acceptable, everyday reasons to want to route traffic through Tor. That's routing traffic through Tor. What about traffic within Tor? And this is the idea of onion or hidden services, services that are hosted within the Tor network itself. If you think back to our original diagram, you saw coming from the computer into the guard node, relay node, exit node, and then breaking out of Tor onto the ClearNet, onto the internet. Here we're talking about services which are hosted within the Tor environment, where there's never that last hop between the exit node and the internet. And in the same way that our website is decoded.legal, you have a name for your service within Tor. They just look slightly different. They end in .onion. So the old way of naming things that will come to an end in the next year or so, version 2 URLs, quite short, still end in .onion, and they're still quite common. The newer, more secure naming is longer, version 3 URLs. Again, they end in .onion, but they're far more far more geared towards cutting and pasting rather than trying to type them out or remember them. So how can you connect to a site in .onion? If you were to cut and paste that into your normal browser, Safari, for example, paste that, it will not connect. It can't connect. It has no reason to Tor, and it probably doesn't know how to handle a .onion TLD either, extension, the bit at the end, anyway. But try it in Tor Browser. You paste it in, just as you would any other URL, and it will connect to the site just as it would any other site. But in this case, it is talking to a server hosted or making itself available within the Tor environment itself. It stays within .onion space. And as you can see, all it goes through are relay nodes. It never breaks out. It never goes through an exit node. In this case, you'll note it says the connection is secure. That's because of the encryption that the Tor network uses, not because the site has a TLS certificate. It doesn't. You can, if you want, have your own padlock on the site, just as we do on the ClearNet. That way, Tor network encryption aside, the connection would still be encrypted. It's a bit trickier to do this for a .onion site than it is for a normal site or service. Digital certificates, encryption certificates come in different flavors. Only extended validation certificates are available for .onion sites. Only a very few providers offer them. And you need to prove who you are, prove your identity to get one of those extended validation certificates, which clearly isn't of much use if you're trying to operate a hidden service. Technically, our site is, I suppose, a hidden service, but we're not hiding who we are. Other site operators may not want to be known, and they hide their identity. For us, I suppose it's an onion service. It's available within onion space, within Tor, but we're not trying to hide who we are. We have all the same transparency information that we do on our normal site, because that's what's required of a law firm in the UK. Who else has onion sites? Alec Muffet has a great curated, it's not complete, it's a curated list of real-world onion sites. Facebook, for example, has probably the nicest onion URL that I've seen. They've thrown a lot of compute power at it to generate that. You can access Facebook within Tor, and great for countries where Facebook is blocked, perhaps, or connections over which Facebook is blocked. It doesn't stop Facebook learning stuff about you. If you still go and post your photos and your status updates or whatever, Facebook still sees those. Tor doesn't render you anonymous, but it protects and maybe enables your connection to the site. You'll also see that Facebook's got HTTPS at the beginning. Facebook has an EV certificate, a TLS certificate, to protect the traffic to its onion site. So does the BBC News, again, a reasonably nice onion URL, making the site available in places where it might otherwise be blocked. In the USA, the CIA has a site within Onion. Version 3 URL, one of the longer ones, and they've clearly put some effort in to generating a reasonably nice URL, cia.gov. But no TLS certificate, you'll see it's just HTTP. Pornhub has a site within Onion. I'll leave this one on screen just in case you want to jot it down for research purposes. It's a V2 Onion. You can access the site through that within Tor. Again, perhaps if you're trying to access it from a country where access to pornography is heavily restricted. Why? Why might you want an Onion site? Well, the traffic never leaves the Tor network, so it makes observation of traffic harder. It is encrypted, even if you can't, for whatever reason, put an encryption certificate on the server in question. You are still protecting your traffic through layers of encryption. Perhaps it's just a sign that you take the privacy and security of your potential customers or clients or site visitors seriously. Maybe you increase the availability of your site if you're trying to deal with a repressive regime blocking access, or you want it to be available in coffee shops which are refusing access to your site. Making it available within Tor makes it much harder to block. But there are other reasons why Onion services and Onion addressing are really useful. So in the last few minutes, we thought we'd share just a couple of applied examples, and one of which is Onionshare. We've solved loads of problems. I say we quite liberally. Lots of people have solved lots of problems with the internet. But one thing that there is no simple, free, open source solution for is sharing files. How difficult is it to transfer a large file to someone? And loads of solutions have popped up for this. But one of the neatest, the cleanest, the simplest that I've seen is using Onion technology, Onionshare. And it is dead straightforward. You install a piece of software on your computer called Onionshare. You drag the file that you want to share, in this case a small text file, and you click Start Sharing. It creates an Onion service on the fly on your computer. You then copy and paste the address of that to send it via instant message or however you want to get it to someone. They paste it into Tor Browser, and their browser connects through Tor or within Tor to the service running on your computer and can download the file just as they could any other file from a browser. But all this is happening, connecting directly through to something on your computer without you needing to change any network settings. You can do it on your phone as well. Transfer the URL, the Onion service, I don't know, via iMessage in this case, pop it into Tor Browser on your phone. Now, in this case, I forgot to send myself the username and password, so an extra degree of authentication, I had to type these in myself. Onionshare was the username, the password was a couple of randomly generated words. You can't see that on the screen for iOS screen capture, but this is now my phone connecting through the Tor network into Tor, the Onion service running on my computer. I can see the file, there we go, it displays its contents. An incredibly clean and simple way of sharing a file of almost any size. The speed is limited by your internet connection, very easily, thanks to Onion services. I'm not great at pronouncing this word. I think it's cwtch, apparently a Welsh word for cuddle, apparently. It has a fancy description for a piece of software, effectively a secure message or a more secure messaging client. Available for Android. I think it's in either alpha or very early beta. Not something I've tried myself, but trying to use the Tor network for increasing privacy and security in your instant message conversations. The last applied example is probably one of the more technical ones, NAT traversal. Do you want to have a crack at this, Alex?
Have a go at that, yeah. So most internet providers in the UK and probably around the world will typically give you one real internet IP address. That's the unique IP, the unique number by which your connection is referred. But unfortunately, you will have multiple computers, phones, printers, all of which really need their own IP address. Well, we talked about this in the SCL basics talk, but what NAT tries to do is make lots of devices all on their own private addresses hide behind one real IP address on the wider internet. And most ISP provided routers will do this. They literally translate the private addresses on the inside network on the LAN to a single IP address on the real internet on the outside, and that's NAT. And NAT can cause problems. It works for the most part, but NAT can cause problems, especially if you want to run something like a service for other people to access on your network from outside, because each machine inside doesn't have its own real address. How is it possible to refer to it from the outside? And it's a pain. You have to set up things like port maps. Well, one of the nice things about the Tor, in fact, in the example we just showed a moment ago, we wanted to share a file with someone. We wanted someone to be able to get a file from a computer, let's say on Neil's network. And we did that with Onionshare. And that NAT was completely irrelevant in that example because of the Onion network, essentially. It was someone on their iPhone out in the world using the Tor browser was able to scoop a file from Neil's computer without having to set up any port maps or trying to mess around with NAT. Hopefully I've sort of explained that without going too much into detail, but essentially it's a way of avoiding all those sorts of problems by launching a service in the Onion network that can be accessed from any Onion browser anywhere.
And in this case, the way it traversed NAT was by going into Onion Space, and then the other user connects through Onion Space as well. There was still authentication in this case. There was a username and password. It wasn't something that anyone could access the file. But it is a simple way of making devices available remotely without needing to have either specific capabilities from your internet service provider or interfering with your router or your firewall. Since it's a tech session, we're going to skip over the legal issues, other than to say I've written a bit about them earlier this year. Both links go to the same place. It's just the top link is our blog on the ClearNet, and the bottom link is our blog on the Darknet within Tor itself. That was everything that we had pre-prepared. I'm going to drop off screen sharing now. I think some questions may have popped up in the chat, but otherwise, any questions, please ask away.
Guys, this has been absolutely fascinating, but I think there's a point we have to let all these people get back to work. I think we've run a little bit over, but it's been a really great talk, and thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
So
Cool.
just to remind you, if you like what you've heard today, buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/SCL, which I shall quickly type into the chat again. But yeah, thank you very much.